Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandr Korol. Here is my book. It came out a month ago. This is my first book that was published worldwide, thanks to the UK publisher who decided to collaborate with me. That is, they kind of reached out and I received some kind of support. And this is probably what prompted me to translate all of my other books into English and work for the world, and share my creativity with the world. What kind of book is this? What kind of book is this? This book have no charity. This is the book about the 7 sins and the 7 virtues. Many people have stereotyped vision, an idea of what it is. Someone immediately thinks that this is something ecclesiastical, religious. It's not really like that. That is, this is about an ordinary everyday life. I have a section, a category on the website, the frequency of the mind. This is the angle of perception. This is the world where you learn to be an adult. Punctual, attentive, responsible, and educated. And I would say that all the books that I write on the frequency of the mind, they are about education, about how I see what is a well-educated mind and what is not. But I want to tell you first about the background of how I came to this book in the first place. How I came to this book. Why sins and virtues? Why is that? It all started with the fact that 10 years ago, when I published my first draft of the frequencies, I shared my view of the world with my readers. I noticed that people are all connected to different frequencies. It's as if there's a person who's on frequency 5, someone on frequency 10, someone on frequency 20. That is, everyone lives on different frequencies. That is, as if there are different social stratas. And that if a person is on frequency 5, then he has his own preferences, what he likes to eat, listen, watch, what places he goes to, and so on. I often surprised my friends and relatives when I could tell everything about their acquaintance. And everyone asked, Alex, how do you do that? And I would say, well, this guy, he's at frequency 7. And at frequency 7, people prefer these brands of cars. And they like hockey, and they also like this and that. And I described it all to them. And when I describe it to my friend, he looks at me in a shock and asks, how did you figure this out? And I say, well, don't you see it for yourself? They're like, what do you mean, see what? And I say, all people, they're on different frequencies. They're in shock. What? I explained people are from different worlds. Let's say they are rappers, there are rockers. That's a rough example, but there are people who, for example, like vulgar clothes and feathers. And there are people who just like modest clothes, high quality, made from Japanese cotton. So that there is not a single brand name mentioned on the clothes. This is a certain category of people, and this category loves it like this. That is, when we come to a restaurant, we can pay attention to what kind of people which restaurant prefers. And I've seen this since childhood, and I don't understand how to explain it. And when I began to grow up, I think I was 21 or 22 years old, I started writing my first book draft, Frequency, about it, where I gave very interesting examples about the fact that, imagine if I surrounded myself with elements of the frequency of a person who comes from an unfavorable world. If I surround myself with its elements and if I connect to this world, everything that happens to him will happen to me. If he is insecure, I feel insecure. If his wallet is often stolen, my wallet will be stolen as well. I mean, that's how it works. I've tested it myself in practice. I've seen this a lot. But as it turns out, people don't often encounter this. It happens, but not often. For some reason, people are all defined by these cells, that is, frequencies. That is, someone lives in world 7, and that's it. For him, it's like the whole world. He will even go anywhere in any country. He will still be in that area, in that house, among those people who are also of frequency 7. And since childhood, I have always felt that I was sort of homeless, that I lived in some sort of corridor. And all people lived in their worlds, and I could not get along in any world, as if I was a stranger there. And what was unusual is that when people had an unfortunate situation in their lives, they could get into this world of mine for a while, that is, into this corridor. That is, a person lives in the world 5, and suddenly his job or personal life collapses, and he gets into my world. How is that? Well, for some reason, this person seems to be starting to see me. For example, he sees my books, but he didn't come across them before. And long time ago, every time I ask my readers, how did you find me? Back then, I wasn't even a little bit popular. Everybody said something had happened in their life recently. And because something happened to them, for some reason, they ended up in this corridor where I live. Then I found an explanation for what it is. That is, since my childhood, I try to find the right examples. And today, it is easy for me to explain. It turns out that when a person is in a society, in some cell of society, let's say on frequency 10, then he is completely connected to it with all his attention, and he lives there with his mind. And when he has an emergency, his attention is freed, and at that particular moment, he is with one foot in the corridor, and he begins to see different other worlds and see other people who are in this corridor. And he enters this corridor temporarily because his heart opens up. He has free attention, that is, he is here now, as if his attention is not clouded by the cell of society in which he lived. But then when his life gets better, in his frequency or in some other frequency into which he got, because while he's in the corridor, he might accidentally choose another world, good or bad, favorable or unfavorable, and so he went in there, and that's it, and he's forgotten all about me. And it's like he doesn't remember me. I am him. It's like we're in parallel worlds. But when he has another emergency, he immediately remembers me for some reason. And I still live in this corridor. And the people who live in this corridor or get into the corridor, they're crossing paths with me, with my books. Yes, it sounds strange, but it's true. Let's get back to the topic of frequencies. I've found out that if you find a person who, let's say, has a family code in him, or he has a lot of friends, or this person is just successful in life, then if I surround myself with the elements from his world, then I get into his frequency, and the same thing happens to me. That is, basically, when you're aiming for something, or when something happens in your life, good or bad, it's actually a frequency switch. You just don't notice it. And when you're dreaming about anything, but you don't have it, you won't get it until you're at the frequency where this thing exists. Yes, it's very unusual. That is, there are these different frequencies. And when I shared my materials, my manuscripts on social network and published all this, a very large number of people from all over the world flooded me with gratitude. For them, it was as if their eyes opened to the world, to how it all works, and many of them put things in order in their lives and everything became better, because in reality, some low-frequency elements could cause problems in your lives. And when you surround yourself with good elements, your frequency immediately is increased and everything favorable is being attracted into your life. True, this is how it works. I had a book presentation and I talked about this topic of frequency with my readers, which is everyone's favorite subject. It is one of the basics. The first one is control of attention and the other one is frequency. I also have a treatise on those topics on my website for free download. You can read it. It's all interconnected. And so I'm talking about these frequencies and I'm saying, guys, there is something that I feel but I cannot describe it. When I find the right words, it's going to be something new, a discovery, a sensation. I'm going to try to explain to you in a crooked way, but explain what I want to tell you. And then I started looking for the words and talking about it. No matter how a person changes clothes, no matter how he changes what he listens to, what he eats, watches, who he communicates with, but there is still something in him. If, for example, there is envy in a person, he lives with this envy. Or there is laziness in a person and he lives with this laziness. In this way, it still restricts him in life. I don't know what it's called, but everybody has different internal light bulbs. Some of them are positive and some of them are negative. And that also affects what is attracted into your life. And around 2 years ago, I decided to try to analyze this topic. And I gathered my readers online in a closed channel, and I said to them, guys, help me write a new book. I'm working on it right now. I don't know what to call it, but remember, I told you that people have, I feel, but I can't name it, some positive or negative puzzles. And I need to find the right words, examples, how to call it all. And it's going to be a kind of a sensation. I turned to the readers and said, guys, please send me all the negative words that come to your mind. All the negative qualities and actions of a person, send them all to me. And people all send me a huge number of lists, all these words. And then I turn to the readers and say, guys, okay, but what about the good, positive qualities? Can you send them to me too? And they sent me all this, and I say, okay, thank you. Now I'm going to talk about each of these qualities and talk about the fact that these qualities are nourished by something in your life. And these qualities affect your life. And when I go through these lists, I realize that the very basis of everything is the 7 sins and the 7 virtues. That is, the 7 light qualities of human and the 7 dark qualities of the human. And then there are branches that include all the other words. And I know that many writers, when they write their books, rely on some external, third-party materials. And I, on the contrary, in order to avoid clogging my mind, I have never read and do not read anything. And you communicate with people in life, you know some meanings of words simply not because you read about it or you were taught in school or in college. It's just, how can you not know this word, right? And here I am telling my readers I've never really Googled it, never read what pride is. All people use that word. In fact, I might be wrong, but let me tell you now how I feel what it is. And that's how I went through every sin at first. I explained the way I feel it, how I assume what it is. And the most interesting thing is that only after I said it to myself, that it was only after I read it in Wikipedia and saw if I understood the meaning of this word correctly or if I made a mistake. It was very interesting. And because I am a very attentive and a sensitive person, I was suddenly shocked because I understood why I forbid my friends to do or use something for their benefit, but I couldn't prove or explain why. And I, for example, used to say, never smoke a hookah or you should never buy a motorcycle. And the most interesting thing is that some people can do it, but my friends cannot. And this is why I say you can, that is, if you do it, there will be a trouble. and people could not understand why. And the most interesting thing is that it is true, and therefore many people were frightened. They did not understand how I knew all this. And I felt that there were some sort of light bulbs go on in a person. And if you accumulate them, it doesn't matter if there are 3 or 5. Just suppose that if you accumulate 5 red bulbs, you will have trouble in your life. I felt that some sin is so inflated in a person that if you feed the sin with another light bulb, that is, the sin is nourished even more, then there will be a disaster in life. And that he is not allowed to smoke hookah, for example, which will feed this sin. And someone who doesn't have this sin can do it, but I couldn't express it. And here I make a discovery, and I like to explore the life of people, the world of myself. I understand that every sin, every bad deed is the quality of a human being. And it's like an animal instinct. That's like a lot of people complain as if it's uncontrollable, but it can be actually tamed. And the book is about how to tame these animal instincts in yourself. Because I explain in this book how, with your deeds and with what music or food you can feed your sins. Just imagine that if I listen to certain music, watch certain movies, drink something, etc., a sin will turn on. It will begin to grow and awaken. This is how sins are nourished. And it turns out that it could be that when your girlfriend, for example, when she is often in contact with her parents, she is one person in terms of character. But as soon as she meets a friend, she immediately changes in her behavior and preferences. Your girlfriend begins to dress provocatively somehow, to go out somewhere without saying where, and then these people may even cheat on you. So why is it happening? Because first of all, your partner, she met that friend or girlfriend who has this sin in them. In addition, this person had a drink. It is also a nourishment of a sin, and therefore this person commits infidelity. This is how it works. I explain it all in the book. That any sin can be turned on and nourished with different elements: music, movies, food, and people. But also, most interestingly, you can stop feeding all the sins in yourself so that they do not take hold of you, because this is a feeling that you cannot suppress in yourself. So it is still fed by something. It cannot come from nowhere. It is still fed by something. And when some sin appears, it immediately brings all the other sins over, and that's how it works. That is, you may have a sin, for example, some of the sins just because you eat a lot. Imagine that you eat a lot, and this turns on not only gluttony, but also other sins begin to pull up. They are all interconnected, but the main thing is that we've figured it out now. And if you read my book, you'll understand how it all works. But in addition to the fact that it is possible to stop feeding sins, it is also possible to cultivate and nourish virtues, and that's power. In other words, these are the light qualities of a person. And if you do the right thing and lead the right way of life, then the green lights turn on in you. And if you accumulate a lot of them, they are all turned on, and everything good in life attracts you automatically, and you succeed. You're no longer lazy. I mean, you have super willpower, super concentration, purposefulness, hard work. Nothing could knock you out. No matter what people do, it's very hard to knock you out. And these are all spiritual qualities. These are light qualities. These are virtues. I also tell you how they can be turned on and nourished. I also plan to make a separate treatise next year that is a kind of scientific story, where I make an addition to the book, Have No Charity, so that people will have more understanding and idea of how it all works. And the most interesting thing is that once I met with an acquaintance and we touched upon the topic that now in Hollywood there have been some unpleasant conflicts for several years. When some actor or director is, what do you call it, is sued for harassing someone. So the bottom line is that this book, it could explain the reason why it happens, that this doesn't happen again, that there are no more situations like that and victims. The purpose is not to justify those people, but at least such situations don't escalate in the future, so that people understand why they couldn't restrain themselves, and therefore they began to harass someone. That it was all because you ate something, drank something, listened to something at the moment which turned on this sin in you. And that's why you could not hold it back. This sin, it turns off your head. It's like an animal instinct. If this book reaches the top and enters the world of education as the main basis of what feeds evil and what nourishes good in man, then peace will come to the world. Isn't that what you want? Be sure to read this book. If you have any people in high places, please knock on their doors and show the book to them. And if you have people who are interested, for example, in making a TV series or at least a documentary, where psychologists, various specialists and scientists will discuss this topic based on my materials, I believe that this will be very useful to people. And this is my first book that has been published in English. Thank you everyone who watched and listened to me. Those who have read this book, please write reviews. For those who haven't read it, be sure to read it. It is sold on Amazon, on various other websites, and on the publisher's website. I also have a link on my official website. Thank you.